William H. Rogers Legislative Building. I received a letter from Chief Deputy County Executive Dennis Cohen, and although I have sent a response to this letter, a copy of which has been sent to each legislator, I would like to bring to light some very serious inaccuracies that were presented. The letter begins with the following statement. Since 2012, this administration has worked in good faith to negotiate a contract with the Deputy Sheriff's Police Benevolent Association. I will remind this committee that the DSPBA had filed an improper practice charge against the county for bad faith bargaining. We asked for costing of the police and corrections contracts. The purpose of this is to see exactly how the alleged savings for the county was being achieved. Being as we must achieve a pro rata share of savings based on these negotiated deals, it seems reasonable that these costings would be made available to us. The next paragraph states that we appear to be at an impasse. This is an interesting turn of events due to the fact that only a month ago, the county stated to the media that they remain ready, willing, and able to sit at the table to negotiate a fair contract with the Sheriff's Union. Well, being as there have been no negotiations or any county proposals submitted to us, why the sudden change? The letter goes on to further state that the administration will be seeking to proceed to interest arbitration. Due to the fact that arbitration would only cover years 11, 12, and 13 and would take at least a year to complete, why would the county wish to explore this avenue? The end result would be the DSPBA would still be out of a contract upon its completion. How does this at all solve the problem? Even more disturbing is the fact that the justification for negotiating the long-term deals with the other units was to avoid arbitration, the very thing now the county is seeking to proceed to. I will state on the record that the DSPBA will not participate in binding arbitration. Binding arbitration is something that deputy sheriffs have fought for as a right. It is, since we cannot strike under the Taylor law. It is not something that this municipality can impose upon us as a means to remove us from the forefront. If arbitration was the path the county wished to go down, it should have been done years ago. The county can feel free to file, but we will absolutely not participate in it, and it simply will not go forward. We will keep the current conditions in place via our expired contract, and we will seek to continue to negotiate a long-term deal like those that were accomplished with the other bargaining units. Additionally, the letter discusses that the administration will not agree to a contract with breach the pattern. Since percentage increases for corrections and deputies have remained in tandem throughout our history, no matter which unit made more, to suggest that we are seeking to break the pattern is completely inaccurate. Only in recent years have the correction officers passed deputy sheriffs in base pay. When it was reversed in previous years, the end result was exactly the same. In closing, as I stated in my response to the Chief Deputy County Executive, my door remains open for negotiations and for both sides to come to a mutual resolution to our issues. I thank you.
John, I got a question. What's the current start pay for a deputy sheriff?
$30,000.
$30,000. And the corrections officers prior to their last contract was how much?
35. Their starting pay was lowered to 30,000. We're already at 30,000.
So then the assumption is if they want to follow suit with, changing your contract to mirror everyone else, they would probably be expecting that you go below 35 to maybe 25?
Well, we simply can't negotiate a deal that would lower the starting salary to 30,000. I feel 30,000 is too low as it is. It has a new pay scale has been proposed. I think it's problematic. I think it's something that while the PBA was able to negotiate a new pay scale, for us, I'm not sure what it accomplishes other than making recruiting much more difficult.
Okay. It's just I have a constituent who is, I guess, about a year now from the last class, and he called me up to tell me that he calculated what his hourly wage was based on what he was earning, and he said it was $14.25. And the governor is now, encouraging that $15 minimum wage for people who work at McDonald's, and I'm a little disturbed to think that someone who carries a gun and has to wear a bulletproof vest could wind up making the same kind of money. And I think that no matter who you are, any law enforcement, whether it be the Suffolk County PBA corrections, yourselves, or our probation officers, who are also in a very serious and dangerous situation many times, that we should be respecting, what you do to protect our county. And $14.25 is pretty sad and a little embarrassing, I think, especially living in Suffolk County. You can't make, he lives at home with his parents. No surprise.
Yeah, I think what's going to end up happening is the people who are going to take the job are exactly that. You're going to have young people who are still living at home. But if you're married with children, to survive on a $30,000 salary is, in this county, nearly impossible.
Right. So, and there's been no negotiations over the past couple of weeks?
No, there has been no negotiations. I've received no counter proposal. We submitted a proposal that would address both a contract and a settlement for highway. The county stated that they are not interested in that proposal. However, I feel if you're going to say that you're going to come to the table and negotiate, it should be exactly that. It should be a negotiation. There should be proposals being exchanged back and forth, and that's not taking place. Simply saying no to something does not get the deal done.
And when was the last time you received a counteroffer from the county?
I have not.
You have never received a counteroffer?
I've received a no.
Well, that's not negotiations. Okay. Well, Rob, you have a question?
What happens if you don't agree to go to bargaining arbitration legally? It doesn't happen?
It will not happen. We won't participate in it because it does not solve the problem. The county can feel free to file for it, but we will not participate in it. It's a right that police officers and deputy sheriffs have fought for when they come to an impasse, but it's not something that the municipality can impose upon us as a means to, well, we're not going to negotiate with you, we're going to go to binding arbitration. That's not how it works.
So arbitration won't happen?
It will not happen.
So there's no mechanism for the state to force you to do it? Or
no. We will simply continue on the conditions that are in our expired contract, and when the county is ready and willing to negotiate, well, our door is open. But doing a 3-year arbitration that will take at least a year to complete would only cover years 11, 12, and 13. It doesn't solve the problem. We're exactly right back where we started. And again, the whole justification for these long-term deals was to allow the county to use long-term planning, because now we know what the officers are going to be making, and to avoid having a third party impose a settlement. Now we have a complete change in stance for one bargaining unit only.
And the probation officers too, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Legislator Silmy, you had a question?
It's more of a statement for the record and for Mr. Becker's edification. And I think this may be the second committee meeting that I've done this, but the chair will recall that at a previous meeting we had requested publicly at the meeting that somebody from the county executive's office come to the legislature to discuss the nature of your negotiations and to provide some reasons as to why you're still without a contract. That public request was followed up by an email from the chairwoman, which sometime later, I think after a second email, we received a reply to from, if I'm not mistaken, Chief Deputy County Executive Dennis Cohen, which basically said that that he will not come to a meeting to discuss publicly your negotiations, and that he has instructed Jennifer McNamara, our Labor Relations Director, that she shall not come to a meeting to discuss those negotiations. And I wrote an email back and expressed that I appreciate his concern about discussing those negotiations publicly, and suggested that we might have an executive session to do so. That email was sent, had to be at least a month or so ago now, maybe longer, and I still have not had a reply. So don't feel alone, I guess is my point.
And I certainly can appreciate their position of maybe not wanting to get in depth as to the substance of the negotiations in a public forum, and I think that's why an executive session would make sense. It just, from our perspective, for this to have gone on this long, we just don't understand it.
I just don't understand, John. I mean, I certainly appreciate your point of view and agree with your point of view, but additionally, from my point of view, this legislature is a admittedly separate but equal branch of county government, and while we don't have the negotiating authority, I believe we deserve to know when negotiations have gone on for as long as they have supposedly gone on, but allegedly not really gone on. I believe we deserve to know why we have contracts in the county with our unions, both deputy sheriffs and probation, that expired 6 years ago and are still not worked out. And to not clue us all in as to those reasons, I think is a travesty, really.
I appreciate that. And the other issue that's still out there is thousands and thousands of dollars are being spent on litigating this highway issue. And this is something that doesn't just affect our union. You have other unions as well. I mean, I certainly don't speak for the PBA, the SOA, and the detectives, but their groups are being affected by this as well, because you have a situation where back in 2008, the police department was taken off the highway, the sheriffs were put on. 2012, the sheriffs were taken off the highway, the police were back on. Well, as this litigation moves forward, if it's ruled that then the sheriffs would prevail in this litigation, now you would have a situation where now the police is coming back on and the sheriffs are going. So how long are we going to ping pong two agencies back and forth? It's simply now is the time to just settle this issue and have peace in the county and stop using two unions against each other in a divisive manner. It should just be settled and put to bed once and for all.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. However, there's one person can resolve this. It's the guy that sits on the 12th floor at the Denison building. And he has every opportunity to sit down with you guys. If you're willing to make that lawsuit go away, why wouldn't he want to talk to you? Just doesn't make sense. So I can only hope. I know we can make a request again that they meet with us in an executive session to say, let's get this done, because there are two unions and another one that's going to be coming up soon, AME, that negotiations need to be done. I know that the PBA, Suffolk County PBA negotiated just with a lower start salary. I get that. But then again, it's not $30,000. And I think that to expect you to go below 30, I think is just unbelievable and disrespectful of our law enforcement officers. So I know Legislator Fleming has a question.
Madam Chair, if I may just quickly interject and just say, that these are our employees, the legislature's employees, as much as they are the county executive's employees. And I know that every member of this legislature feels that way. And we deserve answers.
Right, we do. Legislator Fleming.
Thank you, Chairwoman Browning. Thank you for reaching out to my office, John, and I look forward to being able to get some more education on this. I'm the new girl on the block, but I would like to just say that I wholeheartedly support the call for an executive session. At the very least, I agree with the legislators who've spoken that we have a right to understand what's happening here. But I did want to ask just clarification with regard to the effect of this declaration of going to binding arbitration and the years that would be addressed in any binding arbitration. Could you just clarify what you said about 11, 12, and 13 being the subject of that arbitration? How does that work, and how is there no way that that arbitration would affect any current contract?
Yeah, so our last contract expired December 2010, so beginning January 2011, we were out of contract. So because of a previous memorandum of agreement, we are entitled to a 3-year arbitration. Ordinarily, it would only be a 2-year. So we would have to start from years 11, 12, and 13. Those are the years that would be addressed in an arbitration. Upon completion of that, now you're, so you would have 11, 12, and 13 taken care of. So now you're in 2014. So we're right back out of contract. It really doesn't solve the problem of getting us current and achieving the goals that the other bargaining units were able to achieve, which was to have a long-term deal in place. And for us, as a union, that would be a tremendous thing, because instead of constantly coming here and discussing being out of a contract, we can focus on member issues. We can focus on things that are affecting us as a union. And from the county's perspective, it allows them to, utilize, financial planning for the future. You know what the deputy sheriffs are going to be making through 2018.
Sorry, if I could just follow up. So it's a memorandum of understanding that establishes that the binding arbitration could only be for 3 years.
Correct.
So there's no way that this declared step of going to binding arbitration would result in a current contract for you.
The county would have to agree to a long-term arbitration. That's their decision. If they wanted to go to an 8-year arbitration, we can entertain that. I doubt they would, but.
But that would have to be explicitly stated in order to go beyond this memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Leslie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. John, I understand and support where you're at. 6 years without a contract for anyone, especially when the contract should come from the county, is heinous. But I need to just clarify, letters going back and forth is not negotiation. When was the last time your union sat down with the county executive staff and actually attempted negotiations?
Well, we've had both formal and informal negotiations. It's been a couple months since we've had any kind of meeting in place.
Without getting into what you discussed, which we are not to be privy to, does it basically go as a statement of wants and needs or suggestions and a no?
The county has firmly stated its position in regards to the contract and a settlement of highway. I believe it makes sense to settle both. And I believe the sticking point is a settlement for the highway. I believe that's where the main issue lies. However, if a true negotiation were to take place, I believe it could very easily be addressed, and this could all be done.
Okay, and the $4 million is inclusive in negotiations, or is it just that they want to separate the $4 million from the salary?
Well, the $4 million, in our opinion, should have been returned when the agreement was violated.
Correct.
However, at the minimum, if they weren't going to do that, it was supposed to be paid in December of 2015. That did not happen, which was the impetus for the federal lawsuit, one half of it anyway.
Right.
The Chief Deputy County Executive stated that they were going to now take steps to return that $4 million.
Right.
I am happy to hear that. However, from our perspective, that's not enough for us to withdraw the lawsuit. You still have attorney's fees, associated costs, 9% annual interest would now apply. So The example I use is if I were to go to your house and steal your car, and then after a few years I return it and say, well, legislator Kennedy, aren't you happy you got your car back? No, you stole my car, and that's a serious injustice. So we simply bringing it back doesn't satisfy us.
I could ask another question, but I'm just going to let it go at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, John, I have to say a lot of this was all created by the prior administration, the whole highway issue. You know, you're the new leader of this union. You're trying to resolve the issue. And I have to say 4 years ago, I thought with this administration that things would get better and that, you know, the law enforcement would not be on opposite sides. I know myself, you know, I hear the who took whose work, and I know having been formerly in a union, no, nobody likes that. And I think that, I do believe that's something that you're trying to resolve. But again, if you can't get the administration to sit down and talk to you and work with you, then it's never going to get better. Like I said, 4 years ago, I thought this administration and a county exec who always claims that his father was a corrections officer and worked in the sheriff's department, that he would have a better understanding and would work to bring everybody back together again. And in my opinion, it's gotten worse instead of better. And that's really a shame that we should have our law enforcement officers at loggerheads with each other. And that's just, I just think it's horrendous. But I can say that when I've been to events where there's Suffolk County police officers, rank and file members, and deputy sheriffs in the same area, and the relationship is great. You know, they work together, they're professional, and I never see any animosity amongst them, and they all get along very well. And I'm hoping that this administration will get the message from all of us that this needs to stop, that they can fix this, and they know that they can fix it, so why they're not willing to do something, I don't know. So anyway, excuse me, no speaking from the back. This is Mr. Becker's opportunity to speak. So anyway, we'll make a request again for an executive session. Maybe I'll ask the presiding officer to consider at the May 10th meeting that maybe we could have some time to discuss your issue.
That would be great. And I want to thank the legislature so much for their support.
Now,